times of sorrow, times of hurt. A helping hand out of the dirt. A special crown in heaven for that child. We see now such trouble was mild. A message true rings. This group tells tales and praise sings. A new purpose, a new message, a new life to these tales of not so ancient strife. Revived anew and presented to you these stories, these echoes, without further ado.
It was cold that day. The great sharp north wind swept out Elysian Field Street in blasts that made men shiver, and bent everything in their track. The skies hung lowering and gloomy. The usually quiet street was more than deserted. It was dismal.
Titee leaned against one of the brown freight cars for protection against the shrill norther, and warmed his little chapped hands at a blaze of chips and dry grass. Maybe it'll snow. Then won't I have fun? Oh, but the wind blows.
It was Saturday, or Titee would have been in school. The big yellow school on Marigny Street, where he went every day when the bell boomed 9 o'clock, went with a run and a joyous whoop, ostensibly to imbibe knowledge. Really to make his teacher's life a burden.
Idle, lazy, dirty, troublesome boy, she called him to herself, as day by day wore on, and Titee improved not, but let his whole class pass him on its way to a higher grade. A practical joke he relished infinitely more than a practical problem. Moreover, he was always hungry and would eat in school before the 10:30 recess, thereby losing much good playtime for his voracious appetite.
But there was nothing in natural history that Titee did not know.
He could dissect a butterfly or a mosquito hawk and describe their parts as accurately as a spectacled student with a scalpel and microscope could talk about a cadaver. The entire 3rd District, with its swamps and canals and commons and railroad sections, and its wondrous, crooked, tortuous streets, was an open book to Titee. There was not a nook or corner that he did not know or could not tell of. He knew just exactly when it was time for crawfish to be plentiful down in the Claiborne and Marigny canals, just when a poor, breadless fellow might get a job in the big boneyard and fertilizing factory out on the railroad track. And as for the levee, with its ships and schooners and sailors, how he could revel in them.
Titee shivered as the wind swept around the freight cars. There isn't much warmth in a bit of a jersey coat.
Wish 'twas summer. Don't believe I like snow. It's too wet and cold.
And with a last parting caress at the little fire he had builded for a minute's warmth, he plunged his hands in his pockets, shut his teeth, and started manfully on his mission out the railroad track towards the swamps.
It was late when Titee came home, to such a home as it was, and he had but illy performed his errand. So his mother beat him and sent him to bed supperless. A sharp strap stings in cold weather, and a long walk in the teeth of a biting wind creates a keen appetite.
But if Titee cried himself to sleep that night, he was up bright and early next morning, had been amassed devoutly kneeling on the cold floor, blowing his fingers to keep them warm, and was home almost before the rest of the family were awake.
There was evidently some great matter of business on the young man's mind, for he scarcely ate his breakfast and left the table soon, eagerly cramming the remainder of his meal in his pockets.
Ma foi, but what now? Mused his mother, as she watched his little form sturdily trudging the track in the face of the wind. His head, with the rimless cap thrust close on the shock of black hair, bent low, his hands thrust deep in the bulging pockets.
A new live play toy, it may be, ventured the father. He is one funny child.
The next day, Titee was late for school. It was something unusual, for he was always the first on hand to fix some plan of mechanism to make the teacher miserable. She looked reprovingly at him this morning when he came in during arithmetic class. His hair all wind-blown, his cheeks rosy from a hard fight with the sharp blast, but he made up for his tardiness by his extreme goodness all day. Just think, Titee did not even eat once before noon, a something unparalleled in his entire previous history of his school life.
When the lunch hour came, and all the yard was a scene of feast and fun, one of the boys found him standing by a post, disconsolately watching a ham sandwich as it rapidly disappeared down the throat of a sturdy, square-headed little fella.
Hello, Edgar. What you got for lunch?
Nothing.
Ha! Why don't you stop eating in school for a change? You don't ever have nothing to eat.
I didn't eat today.
You did!
I tell you, I didn't. And Titee's hard little fists planted a punctuation mark on his comrade's eye.
A fight in the schoolyard. Poor Titee was in disgrace again. Still, in spite of his battered appearance, a severe scolding from the principal, lines to write, and a further punishment from his mother, Titee scarcely remained for his dinner, but was off down the railroad track with his pockets partly stuffed with the remnants of a scanty meal.
And the next day, Titee was tardy again, and lunchless too. And the next, until the teacher, in despair, sent a nicely printed note to his mother about him, which might have done some good, had not Titee taken great pains to tear it up on the way home.
One day it rained, whole buckets full of water, that poured in torrents from a miserable, angry sky. Too wet a day for bits of boys to be trudging to school, so Titee's mother thought. So she kept him at home to watch the weather through the window, fretting and fuming like a regular storm in miniature. As the days wore on, and the rain did not abate, his mother kept a strong watch upon him, for he tried many times to slip away.
Dinner came and went, and the grey soddenness of the skies deepened into blackness of coming night. Someone called Titee to go to bed, and Titee was nowhere to be found.
Under the beds, in closets and corners, in such impossible places as the soap dishes and water pitcher even. They searched, but he had gone as completely as if he had been spirited away. It was of no use to call up the neighbors. He had never been near their houses, they affirmed. So there was nothing to do but to go to the railroad track where Titee had been seen so often, trudging in the shrill north wind.
With lanterns and sticks and his little yellow dog, the rescue party started down the track. The rain had ceased falling, but the wind blew a gale, scurrying great gray clouds over a fierce sky. It was not exactly dark, though in this part of the city there is neither gas nor electricity, and on such a night as this, neither moon nor stars dared show their faces in so gray a sky, but a sort of all-diffused lumosity was in the air, as though the sea of atmosphere was charged with an ethereal phosphorescence.
Search as they did, there were no signs of Titee. The soft earth between the railroad ties crumbled between their feet, without showing any small tracks or footprints.
May, we may as well return. He is not here.
Oh, mon Dieu, he is. He is, I know it.
So on they went, slipping on the wet earth, stumbling over the loose rocks, until a sudden wild yelp from Tiger brought them to a standstill. He had rushed ahead of them, and his voice could be heard in the distance, howling piteously.
With a fresh impetus, the little muddy party hurried forward. Tiger's yelps could be heard plainer and plainer, mingled now with the muffled, plaintive little wail.
After a while, they found a pitiful little heap of sodden rags lying at the foot of a mound of earth and stones thrown upon the side of the track. It was Titee, with a broken leg, all wet and miserable and moaning.
They picked him up tenderly and started to carry him home, but he cried and clung to the mother and begged not to go.
Oh, mon pauvre enfant, he has the fever.
No, it's my old man. He's hungry, sobbed Titee, holding out a little package. It was the remnants of his dinner, all wet and rain-washed.
What old man?
My old man. Oh, please don't go home till I see him. I'm not hurting much. I can go on.
Yielding to his whim, they carried him farther away, down the sides of the track up to an embankment or levee by the sides of the Marigny Canal. Then, the big brother suddenly stopping, exclaimed,
Why, here's a cave. Is it Robinson Crusoe?
It's my old man's cave. Oh, please, go in. Maybe he's dead.
There cannot be much ceremony in entering a cave. There is but one thing to do. Walk in. This they did, and holding up the lantern, beheld a weird sight. On a bed of straw and paper in one corner laid a withered, wizened, white-bearded old man, with wide eyes staring at the unaccustomed light. In the other corner was an equally dilapidated cow.
No, it's my old man. He's hungry, sobbed Titee, holding out a little package. It was the remnants of his dinner, all wet and rain-washed.
So, the secret of Titee's jaunts down the railroad was out. In one of his trips around the swampland, he had discovered the old man exhausted from cold and hunger in the fields. Together they had found this cave, and Titee had gathered the straw and paper that made the bed. Then a tramp cow, old and turned adrift too, had crept in and shared the damp dwelling. And thither Titee had trudged twice a day, carrying his luncheon in the morning and his dinner in the afternoon.
There's a crown in heaven for that child, said the officer of charity to whom the case was referred.
But as for Titee, when the leg was well, he went his way as before.
There's a crown in heaven for that child who did what didn't need to be done, but felt. The same goes for those who act in the same manner when no one else is watching. What will it take for us to give this same service of love and compassion as this child who was hurt and still gave more than was never required? Hunger is digested when you're feeding someone else. Praise means nothing when it's leveled with helping others. Pain is nullified when you're someone's relief. What is sleep when you're someone else's rest? I hope before our time is up, we meet more people who eventually will hold on to a crown in heaven.